Hey everyone. Welcome again to Tanzu Tuesdays. So first, I'm going to mention a few of the upcoming episodes that we have. So next week we have tracing issues in your application with Marcin, and I'm not going to even try pronouncing his last name because I it's Polish and it, it would suck real hard. And then the week after that, we have Argo CD with Knative and Cloud Native build packs with Baski Sabla. So check out those. Our other shows and Tanzu Tuesdays, which is what you're watching now, are on tanzu.tv. And if you may have noticed, starting at this episode, we have moved things up an hour. So they're starting at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So hopefully that's a little easier for folks that aren't in the US to join. So yeah, normally, as you know, maybe I do the hosting for this, but I just got my vaccine shot for the second dose yesterday, and I'm struggling really hard to not yawn in front of everyone. And no one wants to see that for the whole episode, since this one's a little bit different, where instead of having just like slides and a demo, there's going to actually be conversations amongst everyone who's here. And Cora was super nice, and she is taking over for me, and she's also way more awesome than me anyway. So I'm going to kick it off to you, Cora.
Thank you, Tiffany. That last statement I am going to heavily disagree with, but otherwise, thank you for the intro. I hope that you're feeling 100% very, very soon. Otherwise, it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be hosting today. I'm glad to be here. We have several special guests. I will introduce one who will introduce the rest of them. So I'm going to introduce Brian Chang first. He is the head of customer advocacy at Tanzu. He leads a program called Tanzu Vanguard. And so I'm going to turn it over to Brian to introduce the rest of the members, to talk a little bit about the Vanguard program and to let you know what the topic of the day is.
Hey, thanks, Cora. Hi, everyone. Super stoked to be here. Super glad to meet everyone. I'm fired up to be introducing the Vanguards, as well as the folks that have joined today to talk about this topic. I'm Brian Chang, as Cora mentioned. I lead the Tanzu Vanguard, and what that is we're a customer community that's made up of super users, and I have the good fortune of working with some of the most smartest, coolest software engineers and architects in the business. And today I've brought three visionary leaders from the Tanzu Vanguard community with me today. And I'm gonna briefly introduce them. First, my good friend, Robert Stamp. Say hi, Robert.
Hi.
Robert is the senior cloud architect at TD Ameritrade in lovely Omaha, Nebraska. Now, I mentioned that because we've got an international flavor for you all. Next, I'd like to introduce Görkem Özlü. Say hi, Görkem.
Hey, guys.
Görkem is the platform architect for Migros, based in Turkey. And then lastly, my good friend, Christoph Villnow. Say hi, Christoph.
Everyone.
Christoph is the senior IT architect at Unique Projects in Germany. And so today's topic is containers and monitoring. So had to get back to you, Cora. Kick it off.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Brian. Okay, so containers and monitoring. So let me level set a little bit, set some context. So traditionally, applications and infrastructure each had their own separate monitoring and logging, right? And these generally showed only statistics and metrics. But today, the industry's changed, right? We're dealing with combined stacks like cloud resources and on-premise infrastructure, virtual machines, containers, applications, and the connections and the dependencies between all of these different parts keep getting more complex, right? And they're also getting more agile, right? Builds, versions, software, they all change frequently. And this makes it very challenging to understand and monitor everything. So there's a need to see the big picture on one hand that includes all of these components, and then also the need to analyze metrics from all of the different stacks together. So let me start with you, Robert, and then Görkem and Christoph, please add on. But can you share, Robert, what container and monitoring tools you've been using? Are you using more than one tool? Why? and how are these performing in your environment?
Well, thanks, Cora. It's great to see you again. Miss you
Likewise.
coming to Omaha. And if you guys get a chance to work with Cora, please do
Good
it.
days.
It's fabulous.
Thank you.
We use multiple tools. We use HealthWatch out of the Tanzu suite for TAS. We're looking at it for our Kubernetes installation, TKGI installations. We have Prometheus, App Dynamics, trying to think of everything else. We do Splunk, we use Grafana to query Splunk to build dashboards off of it as well. And our command center uses that to monitor day to day and activity in the systems. And so I think those are probably the main ones when I get into actively monitor. Those are the tools I have up, and I'm trying to bounce between all of them. And obviously, there's other aspects of that. How about you, Görkem? What do you guys use?
Yeah, actually, we also combine multiple tools together to monitor every service in our environment. And first of all, I should just say Prometheus is our core component. And in addition to that, I should also say VMware HealthWatch, which is just released a couple of weeks ago, the TKGI compatibility. And also, I should also say New Relic for APMs and some storing data for Prometheus for the long-term storing those data. That should be the whole idea, but also we definitely use exporters as well, many exporters to get multiple data from multiple sources. What about you, Chris?
That's actually what I've seen in the infrastructure of my customers, because I'm looking into quite different environments, and I've seen tools like Prometheus as well as Nagios or Tesla tools or CheckMK. It depends on what the customer is used to work with and what he's trying to extract from this information he's seeing on the dashboards. And even if the tool as well brings dashboards already included with it. So I've seen quite a different Grafana dashboards as well. But it's different wherever I go. So I've seen a lot of tools running in their environments.
And that brings up a good point. We do use the Grafana Splunk querying quite a bit for monitoring business transactions, the value streams for customers. Those are very important for us. So I know the topic is containers, but that all kind of feeds into the value proposition or the experience the customer has. So the information radiators you described are very important to us as well. Cor, do you have something more, or do we just keep going? Or
sorry.
I got one.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, Brian.
So next question, looking at container monitoring, which components are crucial to monitor? And then how deep should monitoring watch your infrastructure?
I can take a stab at it, I guess.
It's
Or you go,
difficult
Christoph.
to tell, because it depends. It's always the same what I'm talking about when I'm at the customer side. It depends what you want to see, how deep you are looking into your infrastructure. The first thing you want to know is if your core infrastructure, like your hardware, your firewalling, your network, is running smooth, because if it's not running smooth, you've got problems right away. And if the core product is running just fine, then you're going to think what your day-to-day work consists of. If you need to review your databases, if you need to review the latency of different apps of your web applications or something like this. So it depends on what you need to see on the dashboard, or it depends on what you need to extract from all the statistics you're receiving. But I guess the first point of view is to check that your infrastructure is running and that the components, the virtual components as well, are just running fine. So that's my first discussion, as like every time.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying there. To build on a little bit, I think it's you know, the traditional things would be, well, you want to know about CPU and memory. Yeah, those are fun, but it ends up that when you get into the orchestration of containers, network becomes very important. A little bit of network problem will manifest itself in a lot of interesting ways, and so
Absolutely.
Understanding that piece of it is pretty important. And to that point, one of the things, like when I have web-based applications, a web service or something along those lines, a REST service, I tend to look at the ingress controller quite a bit to see what's going on. If I start to see latency, I'll start trying to track down what app might be causing latency. Because remember, in these container orchestration environments, we have thousands of containers running, and they're not all for the same app. So it kind of has a rippling effect. So if one app is struggling, it could have impact on a lot of others. It could be something that's outside of the container engine as well, which is what I find quite a bit, is some traditional infrastructure component is running a little slower, but that's rippling back into the environment. And then there's also the aspect of what you said around depends on what kind of workloads in that container. If you deploy a message queue, you want to look at, you know, queue, how deep is the queue depth? Is it being processed? Things like that. So
wait,
Görkem,
did it just freeze?
So thanks, Robert. Görkem, do you have an opinion?
Yeah. No, just specifically talking about the container monitoring, I guess Kubernetes has the top priority, I guess. And I get, in my opinion, you should just initially do the monitoring of, you know, the etcd, core DNS, API server, kubelets, and so on. You know, the core components of the Kubernetes. Then I guess you should just do the monitoring of Kubernetes resources such as pods, deployment status, PVC status. These are the, I guess, the initial stuff that you just start with, in my opinion. After all of these, I totally agree with Chris, and I should definitely say that we should also monitor the infrastructure. That means we should just get metrics of ESXi server, vCenter, NS60, and storage. Then we just need to combine all those metrics into just one place and add Kubernetes on top of it and make a whole.
Absolutely. I would add that normally when I'm asking the same questions my customer, is the reason why I'm looking deeper into the environment and trying to extract as much information as I could, is because these information are not just an instant of the statistics, because the information are written down on disks and I can review them later and also see over the time how it evolves in different directions and what could cause problems in the future if the trend is walking in the same direction, or if the statics are going to the wrong direction as well. So it's not wrong to look deeper into the environment, because the information you've got are also able to show you where you're walking and what is happening in like half a year or a year beforehand.
Yeah, I agree. You know, what was normal one day is maybe not normal the next day.
It is, absolutely. It's ever-changing environment.
Yeah,
You
and
know what you're using to.
I want to thank Reddit and the GameStop people for making that exciting. The trading business I'm in. So, yeah, it was exciting. But yeah, I mean, and we do look at all the infrastructure things. We have alarming that goes off, and those will be early warnings for certain aspects of what's happening. But, do you guys have a preference as to whether you do open source or paid, or does it matter?
Actually, it doesn't matter. As I said, it depends on what you want. Because, for example, Nagios is quite a common known tool for monitoring your infrastructure. But you have to put quite some work into it when you want to work it quite well. And on the other hand, you've got tools, paid tools, which are working just out of the box as you wish. And if it doesn't work, you have real support, you have contact. So if you have fun working with open source tools, feel free. It works quite well and give you all the endpoints you need to. But it doesn't mean that paid products are bad.
By the way, paid products are also using open source products, right? Even you just convert one application, you just choose one application or product to, monitor or do some stuff, deployment stuff, then you realize that it's using some open source projects behind the scenes, and you just realize, oh, what's going on here? Yeah, right. Then you just switch over to open source, whether depending on your request or not. That's one thing to mention here, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And we look at it from kind of the same standpoint about pay versus open source or anything else. It's looking at the value and then also understanding the time commitment. If you, and it doesn't matter what product it is, you have to put time into it. It's just a matter of whether you can get the resources you need or not. Some of them are easier to find, searching on the internet, or at least, you have someone like Corey you can call and she'll help you do things.
I mean, would you say that that's the trend, to kind of start your own explorations with open source? Eventually, when you need to go to production, you tend to seek out a supported sort of commercial version of the tool?
I don't know. I would say it's probably company philosophy based a little bit. At TD Ameritrade, some of the tools we chose were because we didn't necessarily want to put the time commitment into learning some of them real deep, right? And then other tools, we're fine with, because they gave us what we needed, and we could focus on the side of the business, or the area we needed to focus on, which is bringing up the platforms and engineering and architecting them. But we could also have this monitoring capability that we needed to provide the holistic view. So that was kind of, I guess, what I would summarize. And that was the same thing at the previous company I worked at as well. As we could go get the money if we needed to. In that case, we chose to go start open source and learn from that to see and we were early on in the adoption of the container orchestration then. So it was we went to go look at tools. All the tool vendors were like, oh man, that's an interesting problem. I'm working on that. So
right.
They were catching up, I guess. So I think a lot of them caught up now.
So another question for you guys. So it's funny, first of all, my screen froze for a second, so I missed a little bit of the conversation, but I feel like my screen froze exactly when you were saying, like, the network is always the problem, or often the problem.
Well, that's just because we like to blame the networking guys. It's not. It's not always the problem.
I didn't know we were doing a demo.
Yeah, it's always DNS.
What I just need to be on the record for my networking friends. It's not always the network's problem. Because I still have to work with them.
Right. No. Although that's also an interesting point, right? You've got, like, the networking friends. Like, part of the challenge of today's systems is when something goes wrong in a different stack, then you need to seek out the experts and work together and kind of compare notes, right? As you said, you're kind of bouncing around when you monitor today, right? That's one of the challenges.
That actually leads into one of the questions I was going to ask. I'll try it.
Yeah, go for it.
What is the most interesting problem you've had to figure out? And I have one for myself, and it was somewhat networking related, but either one of you guys, what's the most interesting one you had to figure out through the monitoring tools? What was going on? You saw something and you had to go research it. Can you think of anything off the top of your head? I'll tell you what, while you're thinking of that, I'll share mine. In a non-production environment, at random times, generally around lunch, I'd have this weird error. And it was communications between a couple of the components inside of the orchestration engine. And for the life of me, I spent all kinds of time going through logs and everything, but it'd show up on the monitor, we'd see it, and I spent all this time. And then this lasted for 3 or 4 days, and I go, I think it's networking related, but I cannot pin down where it's at. And then all of a sudden it just disappeared. So I just went, okay, network's back. So all I can come up with is they're making a network change during the day. In non-production, you could do that. And we were just seeing it. Nobody else was reporting it because they didn't have maybe the same level of monitoring or sensitivity towards it. But yeah, it was a very strange one. And looking through, and this was in Taz, so I was looking through a ton of logs trying to figure out why these two components periodically for maybe 45 minutes just couldn't talk to each other. And it was one, maybe it was 2 instances out of 3 or 4. So it was just like, why you two? So anyway. Do you have war stories?
It's not that huge problem I've reviewed during the monitoring, but I've got a server which was restarting for several days on the same time after some updates were done, and couldn't get the source of why it just restarts every day on the same time, but not like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. It was like 2:31 and 17 seconds. So some kind of weird time settings. And we just checked every workflow and every endpoint pointing to the server and every user connected to it. And if the resource are not well set or something like this. Actually, it just was a scheduled task. Someone just left running for several days and nothing else.
Wow.
Classic.
Yeah.
So it's either the network or like somebody.
Yeah, I was just saying my inner developers. My inner developers tell me I put that in there for you.
We think that we found the issue and removed it, and yeah, lived happily ever after.
Görkem, do you have a war story handy, or do you want me to ask another question while you get that teed up? If you can think of one, no pressure.
Yeah, I guess I can do one.
Go for it.
We were working on a case with Tanzu's support team last week, where HCD fails and does master changes time to time, and you cannot just predict what time to happen, what time to get those messages. After a while, thanks to VMware exporter, which is just an open source exporter, we collect all VMware metrics and correlated them with HCD metrics, just comparing, put one graph at the top, one graph at the below. And we just figured out that, there's a storage backend issue, which just causes by one backup job is just triggered at the specific times. And we just realized, okay, that's it.
Wow. Fun stuff.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So based on your experience using various tools, and you can pick a favorite or the opposite if you like, but what have you found to be the advantages or the disadvantages of some of these tools?
I can go. I think unfortunately the state of affairs, and it's gotten better, but it's the need for multiple tools to pull things off. Now, you can look at BMC and Tivoli and those guys, and they're trying to build the albeit type of tools so you get the information in there. But I don't know if that's the right model or not. I think it's not necessarily the monitoring as much as the reaction to the monitoring and understanding that, like Nagios sees something and seeing something over in Prometheus, that those two are kind of disconnected and they're related to each other, and it's understanding that relationship. And I think, there's other, I think Moogsoft is probably trying to solve that problem a little bit with their AI stuff. And I'll be honest, I saw Moogsoft 3 years ago, so I have no idea where they're at now. But I think that was the goal, is they were to take in a lot of this information and then try and figure out how to correlate it. I think it's that correlation piece that's tough.
Mm.
And I don't have a necessarily advantage or disadvantage to any of the tools. Sorry, that's just my view from all of them.
Yeah, I guess that's not really a disadvantage, but you can put it under it because you have to work really hard to get a cool overview or a clean overview of your infrastructure and all the connections between all the components, so you can work with your monitoring tool and trust it as well. So that's the point you're working for. That you can trust your monitoring tool.
Mm-hmm. How that need to have a tool sort of like show you like, you know, that each tool does its own thing very well, but they don't integrate, right? They don't show you the big picture. How strongly or how increasingly have you felt that need over time, or how different is the need today from maybe 10 years ago or even 5 or so?
Personally, I think it's really important. How are you, Görkem? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just broke off. I didn't hear chorus.
Oh, how much more strongly do you feel that need in terms of advantages and disadvantages of tools, right? If the fact that the tools don't really work together and give you a big picture is one of the main sort of disadvantages of like the tool ecosystem, how much more strongly do you feel the need to have them work together than you did, you know, a number of years ago? How much more severe is that problem today, can you say?
It is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, today you are used to work with quite different tools to get one specific result. Don't need to be in the monitoring. It's also in your front end. It's in your infrastructure environment. It's for your ticket system or your help desk. You're working with different tools, so you're used to it. And if you don't get what you want from one specific tool, you're looking above it and go the extra mile in implementing another tool so you get what you want. And if then both tools are working together, it just, in the end, it's a win-win, I guess.
Well, and I think that might be the disadvantage, is I have to learn all these tools. I mean, at some level, I had to, you know, they required me to go through a bunch of Splunk training so I could do Splunk queries at one company. So in theory, I'm certified something. Don't ask me to do anything with it, but they required that because they didn't want me to be able to do the queries and dashboarding without it. But then I had to turn around and learn Prometheus. So I could do, you know, Prometheus queries. Nagios, this works a little bit differently. So when you start looking at all these, I spend, you know, while my title is cloud architect, if I go work in GCP, I get to do Stackdriver now too. But the thing is, I have all these different tools, and I have to learn each one of them, and I spend a lot of time doing that as opposed to architecting a cloud solution, or you know, Taz or Kubernetes or any of those other things. So I think that's probably the disadvantage. The one thing I did that I saw that I thought was very innovative and good was there was a point, and I don't know exactly where this went, but some of the folks at Tanzu in the HealthWatch world, Amber Olson, I think, had started to lay out a framework for how you could, as an application, a custom build application, lay out what things do I expect you to monitor on, so they could render that on a dashboard. I thought that was a very good idea, because that's one of the areas that it gets kind of weaker or overlooked. Spring Boot does a lot of great things to help you enable those monitoring endpoints, the actuators and stuff like that. But there's the rendering of that on a page, and so you would end up needing to know Grafana or something to get that data up on the page. Whereas I think what they were trying to do is say, well, here's how I think as a developer you should do this, but you can obviously modify it later. I don't know how far that got, but that was a very I think good idea. And I think it's going to be very important as containers go. Sorry.
Yeah, you're really like it's like everything else, right? Where the burden of responsibility is shifting left to everyone's benefit, and you're kind of telling the application, hey, you tell me how you need to be monitored. You tell me what dashboarding you need, or what. Yeah.
Well, it's like writing a controller for Kubernetes, right? You can do it, but as a private company, why are you doing it? I mean, the guy from Postgres operator there's a reason for it. And maybe those guys are the guys who should be telling you, here's the things you might want to monitor for. Any MQ product, the same thing, right? Or any kind of messaging product, same thing. Queue depth is something that IBM MQ guys will tell you about all the time. RabbitMQ will tell you something similar. So I just think that those components can start kind of embedding this into that delivery to help out with this problem of you have to learn every tool.
Yeah, that's probably key. That's a key element, I would imagine, in the whole endeavor of getting that bigger picture, right? Sort of passing the burden to the application to share what it needs to share, rather than, you know, the ops side kind of saying, okay, I got this thing. What kind of, you know, sort of metrics can I stick on it and make sense of it?
Yep, exactly.
So let me ask you, so of the tools that you're currently using, which features are really are mandatory, right? Whether it's like something about the vendor or the cloud-based or in whatever category, what are the mandatory features that you need?
I guess I can go with, you know, the ability to support or have integrations with open source components. You know, I can give one, you know, classic example as Prometheus, which is really, you know, de facto in nowadays. You know, it's like a Kubernetes, right? And the monitoring application should have, even though it's a paid or unpaid product, it should have integration with Prometheus. And, you know, if we are talking about the APM stuff, it should just identify the services automatically. You know, if the Spring Boot application connects with Redis or, you know, some other message queuing system, it just needs to understand, you know, which service is that, and identify that as also. Anyway, it shows, speaking of APM, it should also, you know, do distributed tracing, I guess, which is just important in the developer way. And I guess one thing to mention here is just the webhooks. It should also have integrations with webhooks.
Yeah, what I'm seeing really often is that the need for adding new models or adding your own scripting or endpoints to your monitoring system, because the product itself brings a lot of features with it and a lot of components to monitor right in front. But every environment works different. They're using the same infrastructure, they're using quite the same software products, but every customer is using it on a different site. So they need to have different targets to query, and so they have the need to add new models to their infrastructure, to their monitoring tools. So what I'm seeing is that even though it's a paid product, not an open source product, you need to have the ability to add your own wishes, your own sensors or your own scripting or something like this to your monitoring to get this extra feature working. Just so you have to take just a look on your dashboard to see what's happening on your system.
Are you thinking more configuration or extensibility?
It's extensibility, what I'm talking.
Interesting. And then so if you're talking about like being able to add sensors, what would you say are the most important sensors to have? And are there examples where you have created sensors, or either, you know, just additional ones or more advanced ones on your own?
The most part is that the monitoring systems I'm reviewing, working for like 3, 4, 5 years or even more, and the monitoring tool itself doesn't change, but the infrastructure it's monitoring changed. So it transforms into hybrid clouds or even public clouds or hyperconverged systems, or the vendor is changing, and all the environment is is an ever-changing system. So they used to work with their tool, with their monitoring tool, but this tool needs to be renewed every now and then to match their infrastructure, to match their needs, to match the information they want to extract from their new systems.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, have you, Görkem or Robert, have you had to add any particular specific sensors to the default tooling that you have?
Currently, I can give answer. Currently, I'm just trying to contribute to an open source project. It just scrapes VCSA, the vCenter itself, the services of VCSA. And I'm just trying to add a new sensors for it, you know, the storage, some database or something like those. I guess that could be an answer.
Interesting.
I'm trying to think of a sensor. I don't recall that. I know we've adjusted thresholds in tools we've received, HealthWatch in particular.
Yeah, don't alert me on everything.
yeah, it was. I mean, I still to this day, I get an alert. I adjusted this one in one of the non-production platforms. We get one that says, "Hey, you're out of capacity. You're at 20-some%." Yeah, that really ends up being a bunch of hosts, really, because it's huge. It's our largest platform. So it's one of those you go, yeah, I don't think we're running out of capacity, guys. At any rate, I can't recall the sensor stuff. But I'm sure we did it. I just don't recall.
What did you find when you were toning down the alerts and setting the thresholds? What did you find were like the most important sensors? You know, what did you really care to be alerted about?
Well, if it's with Taz, as I said, the ingress controller or Go routers, I guess is the best term for it. But those guys in our particular line of business, what we want is fast transactions that finish quickly anyway. And so we worry about latency in there, file descriptors being open for a long time, because what happens is if the app keeps the Go router's connection open for a long time, that is one less connection somebody else can use. So we're really monitoring a lot of those aspects of it. We also monitor the log output, because it all goes through Doppler. So we have to kind of watch what's going on there and understand how we scale that. I think one thing I did at a previous company is we worked in I think it's maybe sensor related, but we one of our customers was, several of our customers were quick service restaurants. And we moved the entire application over to Taz, and it was mobile apps. So you have no idea what kind of demand you're going to get. It ends up one company, without telling us, and we're obligated to tell us, but usually they did, ran a promotion where if you ordered something from the menu from the parking lot of their competitor, you got it for free. Well, all of a sudden, our volume just tripled from this. And we'd put something into Prometheus that if we saw certain criteria trigger a job that would start adding worker nodes, so we could actually scale up the application, start scaling up the application. So we had auto scaling on place, but what we're worried about is, do we run out of VM? And we limited that too, because you only get so much inside of an on-prem. But that was probably our most advanced usage of type of thing. And we'd only let it add a few worker nodes, and it would tell us. I think that's the other part of the tools. I think, you know, telling me there's a problem is one thing. If we could figure out how to just automatically solve some of it, that's the best part, and that's probably more the DevOps model, right?
That's nirvana. So, don't even tell me, just solve it.
Yeah, you tell me later. Tell me in the morning.
Right,
but it's all
right,
good.
right.
Even better is when your system is not telling you that you've got the problems. So it's telling you beforehand that you may get a problem. So I guess the thresholds are really a lifesaver sometimes.
Yep. I like the analogy of the mechanic coming out, wiping off his wrench, going, I changed the oil in that bad boy for you. I'll talk to you later, and just walk away. That's my ideal world.
Yeah.
Nice. So in terms of push or pull metrics, do you use agents and why or why not?
We use both. So
Yeah.
I don't know that I've heard arguments for each side. I don't know that I buy into either one of them. So
no strong feelings, anyone on?
No.
Yes.
We are using both too. I guess it's it more depends on what tool you're preferring. So when you prefer a tool which using agents, you have to work with it. So it's
as the graybeard, the guy's been around a long time. The agent-based ones, when they first arrived, had a lot of problems, and the agent would go rogue and eat up all the CPU and memory and crash the server. So let's get rid of that. Let's go the other way. So that's the history behind that. That's why I kind of go, those are problems. They work themselves out over time.
Interesting. Like they haven't lived down the bad reputation that they got from their early days, but they're actually not bad anymore.
Yes. The other side is if you get too many agents, now I'm spending 10 or 15% of all my resources on agents. What are we doing here, guys?
Right.
So there's a lot of balance in there.
Everything in moderation.
Good mixture. You need to have a good mixture between both worlds. So
yeah, I agree.
Makes sense. So a little spin kind of like off the question of like any particular sensors that you're looking for. Let me ask about like some sort of more unique monitoring trigger cases. Like how important is it to have something that would alert you on license capacities or warranty end dates or any other special or unique triggers like that?
Certificate expiration. If you don't have like in Kubernetes, I believe Cert Manager can help you manage some of those. Istio can help manage those. If you don't have those types of functions, telling me the certificate's going to expire well in advance of it happening is very important.
Absolutely.
Because once it expires, things are really bad.
Yeah. The sensor I'm mostly adding is a sensor for showing me when the certificate is expiring. So even if it's the vSphere certificate or a customer certificate for a web page or something like this, we want to know it like 3 months in advance when it's expiring.
3 months in advance.
Three months is a good timeline.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can also use black box exporter for getting SSL certificates expiration dates, right? It's also really important. It's really quick and easy to achieve.
Interesting. I actually wanted to circle back to something you had said earlier, Görkem. You mentioned when you're contributing to this open source project, you mentioned a couple of the topics that you're contributing, but I wonder if you could go a little bit more detail about the use case that's driving, maybe one of those.
The use case, because there is no other application or tool that achieves my use case. That is the simple idea behind why I'm trying to achieve those. Because there's no other way to do it, since there is one application doing half of my requests just by open source. And if I just contribute to that and add more just specific stuff that I need, and probably other people's will need those as well, right? That is the motivation, I guess.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so next question would be, how important is a visual dashboard or a UI? Do you need it at all? Does it have to be fancy, or better if it's minimal, like kind of just focus on some essentials? Do you want notifications by mail or Slack or some other mechanism? Let's talk about that interaction.
I guess that notification by mail is the most used way to inform you about anything wrong with your system. I used to like more minimal dashboards with just showing what's wrong, or like the minimum of information you need to know if it's running smooth or not, in combination with email notification, or even for core products, text message or push application. It's the sort of combination I'm used to.
You mean like a UI that only showed you what the problem was?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we have kind of two different UIs. The command center uses a dashboard that basically has a bunch of little pies on it for each of the different components. And when those start to change color, and sometimes just a sliver, that's enough warning for them to say, hey, I need to start investigating. But when we get into the different teams, there's generally kind of statistics, histogram kind of things going on that show some period of time. And those vary based on the tool and how much data you retain. As far as alerting goes, we do have some email alerting. It really is priorities. So prioritized. So if it's, you know, a status in VMware going from red, or, you know, goes from green to red, we'll sometimes get an email on that. But if it gets to a higher level, it'll trigger out an alert to page one of us to come do something. And so there's a whole infrastructure around paging out. That's what happens is it's driven by the command center. So the command center is notified, then they try and get us on the phone because we're trying to solve whatever problem is before we actually have a real problem. I would say that as far as the container orchestration engines go, I've never had one of those types of pages. I have for backup jobs and things like that, but never for the container engine. So those are kind of, so we do have Slack as well, or Teams, as the new company I'm going to has Teams. But we have some of those notifications.
I also saw different levels of notification. It depends on what you are monitoring. Like if you're monitoring your firewall infrastructure, you want to be informed beforehand if something is sketchy, is not normal, and that maybe via mail to your support desk or the colleague who is responsible for the firewall. But if he's not reacting to it and the threshold is even getting critical, the notification just reached a new level. So maybe get a text message to the manager or the team leader or something like this. So it's quite a big deal to have like multiple layers of notification scheduled to your thresholds.
Mm-hmm. I always view those notification systems like an internal Twitter with escalations. So sometimes there's a lot of people getting notified of things that are happening.
Yeah, that's true. There's a alert overload.
Yeah.
Do you have tools that don't have a dashboard or UI? And if so, do you eventually find that you kind of want them to have that UI? Or does it not matter so much?
I don't know any tool which don't have any dashboards. So
okay.
Actually, I don't know. You can use it, but you don't have to. You can work with your notification or reports if you want to schedule reports, for example. But I don't know any tools which do not have any dashboard functionality.
So let me flip the question then. Are there tools that, so even though every tool has a UI, are there tools where you just don't use it?
I can't think of one.
Good question.
well, actually, I'll give you one. It's kind of tongue in cheek. Prometheus technically have a UI, it's Grafana or something else, so, but we still use it.
Okay, it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like the UI is useful.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see or envision a time where you don't need the UI. I actually, honestly, you only use the UI when you think there's a problem, right? Or you're actively monitoring. For the most part, it's not being used. So, I mean, one of the companies I worked at, they required, and it wasn't me, but they required eyes on glass, which meant somebody just sat there all day and looked at this dashboard. And I'm like, that is a waste of time. We need to fix that and get into alerting and DevOps type things. So I think the dashboard is important when you get alerted, so you can go see what's going on and get the history behind it. But I don't sleep and spend all my day in it.
Christoph, you made a comment earlier about being able to trust your monitoring system, right? So I guess once we really trust our systems, then we can switch our practices and maybe not be watching that big screen and just, play golf or whatever until you get the alert.
Yeah, I mean, not like some Terminator style trust, but you have to know that your tool is reviewing all the infrastructure in every layer and every component. So if it's set up correctly, you don't have to take a look at it at all, except if it's going to you and send you a notification about any problem occurring. And that's where the trust is set up, I guess. At that point where you don't have to look at it, because you know it will revert to you as soon as any problem occurs.
Do you think we're there yet? Do we have that trust yet with our existing tooling? Or I guess it's not just the tooling, right? I mean, it's like everything is happening at once. We're expanding the stacks. They're all more interconnected, and we're adding tooling. So maybe because of that, is it too early to say yet that we can have the total trust?
I guess for some point we won't get this level of trust into our monitoring, because not of the monitoring itself, because it just works fine, but of the underlying infrastructure, which is the monitoring tool reviewing, because this is what changes every second, and also new things will add up to the infrastructure, which the monitoring tool is not aware of. So you have to review it every now and then, at least, to make sure that it will work just fine with every new thing you add to your system.
Yeah, and to add on to that, you have some leadership complications in there too, where leaders who worked through the industry tend to work like they were taught. So as these things develop and where confidence happens in them, the people who are getting that confidence today will be the leaders of tomorrow. And so it's sort of like Agile. I started Agile in 2000. Now everybody's doing it. In 2000, it was like, why are you doing that? Why are you pair programming? You're just wasting resources. Those are all the things I heard between roughly 2000 and 2008. But then everybody's, the people who are working in it started to evolve out and become leaders. And so that's why everybody wants to evolve, and they all have their own opinion on it. We'll skip that part. But the point is, evolution happens at a much slower pace sometimes around getting that comfort that you can have the tool there and it will do the things you think it will do. And some of that is, demonstration. If Christoph or Görkem put something in place and it's automatically solving that problem, then that builds more confidence in the leaders, because they're the ones who have to go talk to the management upstairs most of the time, and they don't want that conversation. So there's that side of it too, to not forget.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, let me ask Brian, is there anything on your mind that you think we should still ask? It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has, and I'm going to admit, so originally the plan was for Core and I to take turns asking questions, but I got so riveted with all your answers that I just asked Core to do it. I just wanted to listen. This was great, guys.
Sorry I stole your turn.
Yeah,
no, you were helping. You were helping.
And now, has Tiffany started taking a nap? I haven't, we entertain her enough? That's all I'm asking.
She's probably fascinated as well.
She's still yawning.
So here's my final question to the three of you, and I want to hear Görkem, then Christoph, and then finally Robert. So everything you know about containers and monitoring to this point, let's travel back to the past for when you first started learning about this and leading this. What advice would you tell yourself now that you know to yourself when you first started this journey? Do you understand my question?
Yeah.
I want to know your wisdom. Go.
I guess it's don't be scared, even if it's new, because all the information may scare a lot, You have to put a lot of time in it and learn new things. But I guess I would say, yeah, don't be scared. Just do it and learn on the way.
So wait, does that mean, Christoph, when you went through this journey, you were scared and terrified, and then you realized, oh, it wasn't even that scary at all?
Always be.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, of
Absolutely.
course. Yeah, because you're trying new things for the first time. I get it. Okay, cool. Good answer. Görkem, what advice would you give yourself?
I guess I can say RTFM.
Which is
Good one. Yeah, good one.
Then I always read the documents, but just want to point out the documentation is really important, and whether you read those documents time after time, you just realize new stuff, right? Even though you just read it today and you can read it tomorrow, and I see a new things here. That is, I guess, the thing that I would just say to myself.
So you would advise yourself to read the documentation. So it sounds like
it is
when you first started this journey, you weren't reading it and you were bypassing it,
No.
and you wish you did read it, right? Is that what I heard?
Sometimes, but also not sometimes. Yeah, it
Okay.
depends on the situation. You sometimes read it, you don't sometimes.
You're busy or you're lazy. So don't be busy, don't be too busy, and don't be too lazy. Read the document. I got it. Okay. And then we're gonna bring it home with our heavy hitter Robert for the home run. Robert?
Yeah, I don't know
advice.
if I can. I don't know if I can do anything better than these guys. So I'll try. I agree with Christoph. Is kind of my what I would tell myself is, don't be afraid. Jump in, learn it. It's just like anything else.
Sure.
Are you gonna make mistakes? Sure, learn from them.
Yeah.
And just keep going. And use your best judgment. You have a little voice.
Sure.
The little voice says, hey, maybe that's not right, or hey, let's look at it. Follow some of that and figure it out. There's no no roadmap to the end. It's a journey.
That's right.
So just keep that attitude towards it. That's all.
Here's what I find, Robert. It's that you're terrified of making that mistake and you let that fear take over. But in reality, when you finally do, it's not as bad as you thought. And if you had just, kept pressing forward, you would have got through it so much faster, right?
Or you would have read the docs.
That's true. I have skipped reading the docs and gotten in trouble there. But and by the way, I'm going to say something that'll scare every executive in IT.
Say it.
That is, and I tell people this: you're going to make a mistake. You're probably going to take down a production system. Yep, everybody's done it. But if you are scared of doing that, you're not doing your job. Your job is to go do those things and do them in a manner where you're not intentionally taking down the system. You're doing what you think is right.
Right.
And if you do make that mistake, you recover from it and you learn from it. Those are the two big keys of that. And I can't take full credit of that. When I was in early in my career, probably about 3 years in, I ran payroll for a major company. And I screwed up the payroll system. So think about that.
Did you pay yourself extra, Robert?
No, and there's a whole another story about audit.
And that's why
I don't think I got a paycheck on time for months. but I screwed up the payroll system, and it crashed, and I was terrified. I'm like, I have 15,000 employees out of 30,000 that didn't get paid or aren't going to get paid. Luckily, it ran a few days before actual payday. And my boss turned to me and she looked at me. She goes, there's two ways you're going to come out of this. One is you're going to be scared to death to never do anything. Mm-hmm. And the other one is you're going to jump in here, you're going to fix the damn system, and we're going to get going again. And she goes, you have 15 minutes to figure out which one of those you're going to be. And I'll be right back. And she came back. I was
an inspirational leader.
Good choice. Because I didn't need that other person. So, and like I said, learn from those experiences.
That's
very
attitude.
important.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Awesome.
I will go ahead. What were you saying?
And to also tack onto that, like it's good to, like with the trying to not be afraid, to also not be afraid to ask questions or even ask people to work on something with you when you get stuck, or if you just want someone to be there while you try learning things.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you
Be
learn, you win
open-minded to all
too.
that.
Yes.
This
That's
is why we
great.
like Cora coming out to teach us and pair with us.
Well, you know, when I'm teaching, I'm really learning from you. It goes both ways.
Told us that
I've learned
before.
so much from you.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're at time,
Wait,
right?
sometimes what
yeah.
Cora learns is patience. She's a very patient person. We're just making that even more pronounced.
Oh no,
That sounds like a private story.
It's always such a there's so much to learn from other people, right? I mean, I guess that's if I were to add a lesson to myself, it's just there's so much to learn from other people. Always ask for help when you need it, right? And other people have so much to teach. So that's definitely been my experience working with, especially.
I want to be clear.
TV
Cora's
marketing.
never been angry. Never been angry. That's why
Not
I
in
mean
public.
patience. Yeah, I'm sure she went somewhere, but with us, she was very patient. She never raised her voice. She always just looked like she's in deep thought.
I hope other people didn't raise their voices.
No, we've never had that.
But this is, I mean, on my end, yeah, go ahead, Tiffany.
I was gonna say, I like how this stream started off and is ending with how awesome you are.
I don't need therapy anymore. I'm just gonna come here and feel better about myself. No, you all are wonderful. This has been a fascinating conversation. I love how dynamic it's been. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for the generosity of your answers. And so for me, it's been really a pleasure and an honor speaking with all of you. And if Brian and Tiffany, if you wanna wrap it up for us.
Yeah, well, thanks to all of you for coming. Like, this is awesome, and it was nice having like one of these times where it's a little different than the things that we normally do with like here maybe talking through some slides or going through demos, and like instead just like having conversations the whole time, and that's really cool. And we'll definitely have to keep doing more of these things with Brian and your lovely Tanzu Vanguards, because it's always great.
Happy to be guest. Thanks for including us.
Of course. And thanks everyone for watching. And again, all of our shows and episodes, you can see either the videos after the fact or what's coming up on tanzu.tv. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
See you guys later. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.